Guys, this is a video in response to many requests to update the series on Jupiter. And that's what I'm doing tonight. But it says in this article, and it's one of many, it says Jupiter may have destroyed the solar system's first planets, and that was the inner planets. And in my opinion, the asteroid belt, which is between the fourth planet Mars and the fifth planet Jupiter, was actually once the fifth planet. Let's take a look at this. Now, it says it's becoming increasingly obvious that our solar system, with its inner collection of small rocky planets in an outer region buffeted by gas planets, and Jupiter is a gas giant, it's basically our sun's binary twin. It's quite uncommon. According to a remarkable new study, the reason may have to do with Jupiter and an ancient migratory journey that kick-started the destruction of our solar system's earliest planets. Our solar system is atypical in that it lacks planets that orbit close to the sun. Aside from small bits of debris, there's nothing substantial within the orbit of Mercury. The default mode of star systems, as it were, tends to involve the formation of planets featuring tight orbital periods, 100 days. Now remember, we're 365, and masses much greater than Earth's. Not only does our solar system feature an uncharacteristic planetary configuration, it is also missing a lot of mass. According to Caltech astronomer Konstantin Batygin and UC Santa Cruz astronomer Greg Laughlin, it is possible that our early solar system did in fact contain this mass, possibly in the form of planetesimals, or maybe even a set of super Earths. Regardless, something happened to them, and that something was Jupiter. Now let me pause in the article just a minute. Guys, the ancient Sumerians called Jupiter Nibiru the planet of the crossing. It's called the Grand Tack scenario. Look it up. It's not just this article. Remember that name if you want to go in and research where the real Nibiru is, what it is, and how it came into the inner solar system, much as we know. We already know that it had devastating effects. It says soon after its formation, Jupiter is theorized to have migrated inward from a distance of 5 AU, where it's at now, where 1 AU, which is average distance of the Earth from the Sun, to a distance of 1.5 AU. Guys, that is very close. Let's quickly look at this AU chart, guys. The Sun, of course, is 0.0 AU. That's an astronomical unit, meaning the average distance between the Earth and the Sun. You can see here the Earth is 1 AU from the Sun. Mars is 1.5 AU. The asteroid belt is 2.8. Jupiter is 5.2 AU. But remember, Jupiter came within 1.5 astronomical units of the Sun. Think about that. So it went through what I consider the asteroid belt to be, would have been the fifth planet, shattered it. Now, as you will see in the report, Saturn came in behind Jupiter's. Jupiter was proceeding inward towards the Sun, again to 1.5 AU, shattering the fifth planet. And guys, you've seen the big scars along the surface of Mars, the extreme heat it went through because it has the largest volcanoes in the solar system. And in this particular model, this is how far it came. That would account for the asteroid belt. It would account for the scarring and the deterioration of the atmosphere on Mars. Now, Jupiter has since then, and we're going to look at the model, gone back to 5.2 AU. Saturn is 9.6. These are the two giants. Jupiter is a gas giant, the binary twin of the Sun. Now, quickly, we'll go back to the Grand Tack scenario. Soon after its formation, Jupiter is theorized to have migrated inward from a distance of 5 AU, where 1 AU, again, is the distance from the Earth to the Sun, to a distance of 1.5 AU. That's where the scarred remains of Mars is, with no atmosphere. It says before reversing direction and settling into its current orbital position, again 5.2. This journey, which happened billions of years ago, set off a chain of events that caused the first generation of inner planets to break up and fall into the sun. What's more, this process set the stage of the formation of small mass terrestrial planets like Earth. Also, think about the moon. The reason for the sudden change in Jupiter's direction has to do with a process called resonant locking. This happens when the gravitational effects of two convergently migrating planets leads to a reversal in direction. In this case of our solar system, the second object was Saturn. Now, back in 2001, researchers at Queen Mary University of London proposed a scenario in which a newly formed Jupiter cleared a gap in the protoplanetary disk. Think about that. That is the solar system. Then, as the sun pulled the disk gas inwards, Jupiter also began to drift inward. Astronomers likened it to a conveyor belt, also noted in the Caltech release. It says Jupiter would have continued on that belt, eventually being dumped onto the sun if not for Saturn. Saturn formed after Jupiter but got pulled toward the sun at a faster rate, allowing it to catch up. Once the two massive planets got close enough, they locked into a special kind of relationship called an orbital resonance, where their orbital periods were rational, that is, expressionable as a ratio of whole numbers. Think about this. It was called a 2-to-1 orbital resonance. For example, Saturn would complete 2 orbits around the sun in the same amount of time that it takes Jupiter to make a single orbit. Think about that. Saturn's further out, so it's moving more than twice as fast. But you know, Jupiter does not orbit the sun, but the sun and Jupiter orbit the same point outside the surface of the sun because of the large mass of Jupiter. But in such a relationship, the two bodies would begin to exert a gravitational influence on one another. And guys, you go back to the ancient Anunnaki, go back to the ancient Sumerians, and listen to these same stories. But it says that's when all hell broke loose in the inner solar system. Inner annihilation is what this is called. According to Bactisian and Laughlin simulations, Jupiter would have thrown all the planetesimals encountered into orbital resonance. As they got closer to the sun, their orbits would have gotten more elliptical. Traveling in these new and elongated orbits, these objects, some of them measuring as much as 100 kilometers wide, swept through previously unperturbed regions of the disk, the solar system. This facilitated a cascade of collisions among the debris. It was a massive bowling ball effect. Calculations show that during this phase, every planetesimal would have hit another object at least once every 200 years, shredding them apart and throwing them into the sun at an increasing rate. Now, what is amazing to me is about the simulation. It says, fascinatingly, researchers performed another simulation involving a population of super-Earths in the inner solar system, 6 to be exact. And this goes back, guys, to other solar systems. Again, we are atypical, and then the fact that a lot of the big solar systems have large planets very close to the sun. We do not. It says their models show that these super-Earths, which collectively contained a combined mass 40 times that of Earth, would have been shepherded into the sun by a swarming flurry of decaying planetesimals over a period of, get this, a mere 20,000 years. And let me say this, many of the new models are showing the same inner motion of Jupiter. It matches exactly what the ancients talked about, the destruction caused by Nibiru. Now, if you look up Nibiru, which in modern terms is spelled Nibiru, in the ancient Sumerian, it was Neberu. Same thing, same meaning. It was the planet of the crossing or the crossing point. Guys, if you look into the Nibiru Babylonian astronomy information, you can see first, as many people, they will say this word is not in the Sumerian language, but it's because it is spelled this way with the Neberu or Nebiu. It is a term in the Akkadian language translating to crossing, or point of transition. And Jupiter did make a crossing, and that's why we have the asteroid belt. It says, especially of rivers, river crossing ferry boats. In Babylonian astronomy, the term Nibiru in cuneiform, spelled N-E-B-R-U or N-I-B-I-R-U-M, refers to the equinox and the astronomical objects associated with it. Nibiru was considered the seat of the Summus Deus. That's the God on high, guys, which separates the stars like sheep. In Babylon, identified with Marduk. The establishment of the Nibiru point is described in Tablet 5 of the creation epic Enuma Elish, when Marduk fixed the locations of Nibiru, Enlil, and Ea in the sky. Nibiru is Marduk's star, which he made appear in the heavens. The stars of heaven, and this is from the text, let him, Nibiru, set their course, and let him shepherd all the gods like sheep. Nibiru is described more closely on the complete cuneiform tablet. It says Nibiru, which is said to have occupied the passageways, listen, of heaven and earth. What is a passageway? Because everyone above and below asked Nibiru, again, this is from the text, if they cannot find the passage. Nibiru is Marduk's star, which the gods in heaven cause to be visible. Nibiru stands as a point as a post at the turning point, the way through. The others say of Nibiru, the post, the one who crosses the middle of the sea, Tiamat. You ever heard that word? Without calm. Not calmly, without calm. May his name be Nibiru, for it takes up the center of it. Now, where is Jupiter now? About halfway through the solar system, 5.2 AUs. Listen to this. The path of the stars of the sky should be kept unchanged. They were not at this time. It goes on and says, when the stars of Enlil have been finished, one big star, although its light is dim. And guys, remember, Jupiter is not really a planet. It's a gas giant. It orbits the sun every 11.8 years, the same time that it takes to go through a solar cycle. It divides the sky in half and stands there. That is the star of Marduk. Check out the pronunciations and the meanings. Mul Amar .ud, Nibiru, Jupiter. It keeps changing its position and crosses the sky. Normal stars don't do that, do they? They're kind of in their constellation as you see them go on until we go into another age. But Jupiter moves, and it also appears to move forward and backward because of the rotation of our planet. But guys, this is why when you see these lens flares on these cell phones of another planet, when it's really a lens flare, Nibiru or Jupiter has been there the entire time. Will it ever come back? What would happen? What would cause Jupiter to again move inward into the solar system? It wouldn't have to move far. Think about this. Jupiter, the fifth planet outside the asteroid belt. Let's take a look at this chart just for a minute. You've got the sun, you've got your inner planets, Earth, Mars, and where the fifth planet was, according to what I think, is the asteroid belt. Remember, Mars is at 1.5 AU, and that's how far Jupiter drifted. Of course, it would have collided with any planet in over those period of years that was in this orbit. As Saturn was pulled in behind it, it did that 2-to-1 lock to where it stopped the progress as Jupiter was approaching Earth. And think about this, the destruction talked about in the Anunnaki. All of this debris, which is now kind of collected back into an orbital pattern, would have been cast all through the inner solar system, knocking out the ice sheets on both the north and south poles. You see what I'm saying? This is what we're looking at. So, again, people talk about Nibiru being in the outer solar system, or they see it on a lens flare on their phone or something. Guys, that's not being very smart, okay? Nibiru is right under your under your nose. Let me put it that way. And guys, how would we know if there was a movement? First, there would be reports that Jupiter would be much brighter. Think about this. It has 66 moons known. It's and a lot of other debris. You've got the 4 major Galilean moons, but there's 66 major moons that are orbiting around Jupiter. If it were to drift inward, what would be the first result? The outer moons of Jupiter here would collide with the rocks or the debris inside the asteroid belt, throwing them out of kilter into the inner solar system, creating chaos again. But would we be told about that? No, we would find out the hard way. Is this ever talked about in history or biblically? Now, to me, Job 38 says it all, guys. In verse 22, he's asking Job. This is 38. For 36 chapters, Job has listened to some Democrats tell him that he is cursed, and that's why he's lost everything, and just, the story of Job. But anyway, God steps in chapter 38 and tells him to quit listening to these fools. If you pay attention and understand the Hebrew, it says, "Hast thou entered into the treasures of the snow? Or hast thou seen the treasures of the hail?" Now remember the battles in the Bible. These large hailstones would fall upon the enemy, which I have reserved against the time of trouble, against the day of battle and war. What is that day, guys? That's the great day of the Lord, that last battle. And that's what this verse reminds me of. If something was to cascade, we have a great hailstorm, one of the greatest disasters of all time, along with the largest earthquake of all time. The Jupiter effect would be the cause of it. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not going to be some lens flare coming in far away from another galaxy. This is Nibiru. That is what you're seeing. That is what they've been talking about. So when it moves, or if you were to, let me just say this. If there was a large planet behind the sun, the entire population of the planet would see it. It wouldn't be on just a few lens flares, 10-cent cell phone cameras. But this thing is there. It is the hidden giant. If it moves forward ever again, all hell will break loose. We're watching it. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.